Teruvan Saranai. May the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem be with you all. Good evening, Dr. Chien Hoong Gooi, Dr. Ariyaratne, the two moderators, Tiara and Sanara, and all those who have joined this session from around the globe. It's an honor to welcome you all to the second session of a series of intergenerational dialogues entitled A String of Pearls. Vishwaniketan International Peace Center of Sri Lanka has organized this program to felicitate Dr. A.T. Ariyaratne, the founder of the Sarvodaya Shramadana movement of Sri Lanka, who will be celebrating his 90th birthday on 5th November 2021. It is indeed a blessing that Dr. Chien Hoong Gooi has accepted our invitation to be part of this series of dialogues and share his words of wisdom with us. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you all to Dr. Gooi. Dr. Is a teacher of Buddhism and Buddhist meditation in mindfulness and insight traditions. By profession, he is a clinical psychologist and the director of the Psychology Clinic at the University of New South Wales, Sydney, Australia, very well known as UNSW, where he directs the postgraduate training program in clinical psychology. Dr. Gooi is also a director of the Sydney-based Buddhist Library, which is a non-sectarian Buddhist resource and teaching center. His unique combination of knowledge in Buddhism as well as in psychology is truly inspiring. Now I would like to introduce our two moderators, Tiara Ganegama and Sanara De Silva. Tiara and Sanara were two of the first few children to join Vishwaniketan's 3 years mini spiritual retreat for kids program, which commenced in 2010. They have already begun their own journey of serving a purpose larger than their own lives, raising their voices to promote peaceful coexistence of not only human beings, but all life on earth. Due to the imminent threat of the third wave of COVID-19 in Sri Lanka, we are unable to host this event from Vishwaniketan premises, but we are very glad that we can still connect from our personal spaces to bring a smile and a precious message of wisdom right to your homes. With these introductory remarks, I would like to invite Tiara and Sanara to commence the dialogue with Dr. Chien Hoong Gooi. Thank you.
We're pleased to have you here with us, Dr. Chien, today, despite it being 10 p.m. in the night in Sydney. So today we're here to talk about, I think, one of the most important topics in today's day and age, smile and joy. Especially being stuck in our houses these days and during these challenging times, it's very difficult to put a smile on our faces during these challenging times. And for instance, for this discussion, we were trying to find a picture using the footage we have at Vishwaniketan during the kids programs, a picture of a child smiling. Yes, we found so many pictures of children laughing, but it was so difficult to find a picture, a genuine picture of a child smiling. So we would like you to, Dr. Chien, discuss this topic with us and enlighten us further on this topic.
It's a pleasure to be here, Tiara and Sanara, and also Dr. Ari. Wonderful to be here, to be part of this celebration of yours for this year. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, very happy to chat more about the whole topic about smile and joy, which I agree, it's very much needed in the day and age that we live in. And sometimes probably not enough smiles and not enough joy around, but let's see where this conversation goes.
Doctor, once again, it's really an honor to have you here with us. The first question we have prepared for you is, how would you define smile and joy? Is a smile always an expression of joy?
So it's a very interesting question because these are things that we typically experience like smile and joy without really thinking too much about it. But when we actually pause and think about it, we start to delve a little bit more deeper into the nuances in this whole experience. So let's start with joy. Joy is typically an emotional state which we experience, typically a sense of delight, and it usually has a quality of openness. There's a sense of uplifting. There's usually joy is kind of buoyant, kind of floaty, uplifting. And it's typically associated with when someone is feeling well and kind of well-being, or is usually associated with a sense of success, good fortune. And in a worldly sense, probably having what one desires, that's a sense of joy. And when we look at it from probably a Dharma perspective, this is a joy has got many different layers, a different purity of joy, so to speak. And this is a state of mind that can be trained, especially through Dharma practice, through meditation, like metta meditation is a huge one to develop joy. And when one is able to really develop these qualities more and more, you can incline the mind, you can train the mind to be able to access or to enter into a joyful state more easily or even at will. So this is a state that is available to us the more that we tap into. So this is joy on the one hand. On the other side, when we talk about smile, the simplest is facial expression that's quite universal, right? We smile, especially when we feel a sense of friendliness. Typically, there's a mouth movement around that. But there's also people talk about we don't smile only with our mouth. And really, if it's a genuine smile, we smile with our mouth, we smile with our eyes, we smile with our hearts, we smile with our whole entire being. So you can see that it's kind of all different layers or different levels of smile. And I'll probably touch upon this a little bit about the kind of more the scientific exploration and the study of smile itself. But for now, it's useful for us to recognize that smile comes in probably different forms. And your second part of the question is smile always an expression of joy? Not necessarily. If it's a genuine smile, if it's a real heartfelt smile, then yes, it's usually associated with joy, a sense of delight, or even a sense of care that's actually there. But it's not necessarily always associated with joy. You can smile because we are being polite. We can smile because we are kind of evading a question. When someone asks us a question that we don't really want to answer, we'll just kind of smile. But it's a different type of a smile. So in some ways, again, smile has different layers, similar to, I think, how joy has different layers. And I spoke about the study of smile itself, because by profession, I'm a psychologist, so I'm also a scientist at heart. And when I look at this whole area about the study of smile, it gets quite interesting. In the literature itself, it talks about different types of smile. And the highest level that they actually define, the most genuine smile, is what they call a Duchenne smile. This is associated with a scientist in the 19th century called Guillaume Duchenne. And he is credited as the person who has mapped out the different muscles of the body, including the muscles to do with facial expression. And so the name Duchenne is his surname. So the Duchenne smile differentiates that between a non-Duchenne and a Duchenne smile. So a non-Duchenne smile is an activation of what they call the zygomatic major muscles, which is the muscles associated around the mouth area. So it's a non-Duchenne smile, looks a bit like this. So muscles pull this way, yeah? A Duchenne smile, however, has this part plus the activation of the orbicularis oculi muscle, which is the eye muscle. Yeah, and this is, like I say, the genuine smile. If you put these two together, the smile looks a bit like this. So they are smiling with their eyes as well. There's a sense of joy and delight. And that is typically a sense of what they call a Duchenne smile. And the Duchenne smile is interesting because it is this muscle plus that muscle, and the descriptor is you often see lines around the eye. So they call it the crow's feet. It's like a feet of a crow with lines there, right? And then there's also bagging around under the eye muscle. So this is usually a sense of a genuine smile, a real delight, like real sense of like, wow, right? And this is why I was saying earlier on, we smile with our mouth, we smile with our eyes, we smile with our heart, we smile with our whole being. So I think when we smile with our whole being, quite naturally, it is a Duchenne smile. So hopefully this gives a little bit of context in terms of what we're going to be playing around with the different concepts.
Yes, Dr. Chien, agree with you. And thank you for sharing us some context on what a smile and joy is. And it definitely helped us understand the topic way better. So moving on, one of the questions we had is, what sort of an effect can pure joy and a genuine smile have on our mind and body, as well as people we interact with? In other words, is there a domino effect?
This is a big question. And there are so many layers to this particular question. And this is where it gets really interesting and exciting. We know from a fair bit of research now that if you're in a joyful state or a happy state, then the various different neurobiological changes, the body functions differently, the heart rate changes, it regulates better. You've got hormones such as dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. These are kind of so-called the good, happy, helpful hormones. Those tend to be regulated and in more abundance when we're in these states more and more. So that's pretty kind of a pretty well-known sense that I think we also experience it in our lives, where when we are smiling, when there's joy, when we feel happy, naturally everything seems to move better, right? Physically, we feel better, we feel more alive, we feel more energy. So that is definitely a sense that from a mind and body perspective, smile and joy is a huge boost. It's a good energy giver and a sense of vibrance. Now, what is actually interesting is that the study of smile itself is giving us some additional information that sometimes you can have smile without necessarily accompanying joy, but you can still feel the effects of it. And this is one area that fascinates me. I don't do this research myself, but looking at my colleagues around the world and historically in the area of psychology and science, this is where a lot of interesting studies have been published over the years. And one of these ones I'll share with you. One of the earliest ones was in 1988. A group of researchers from Germany and the US, they studied a group of men and women. So they asked them to come into the lab. They say that, they cover up what they're actually trying to study so they don't try to skew the effects. So they say this is a multitasking study. So you come into the lab, we just want to study as psychologists, what happens when people try to pay attention to multiple things when they're doing a particular task, for example. So what they got them to do is that they gave them each a pen, and then they say, for these different groups. So one group, they say, can you please hold the pen this way? So this way, teeth only, no lips. Yeah. The other one is hold it with your lips only, with no teeth. So you can see what they're trying to simulate here is a clever way of making someone smile without telling them that they're actually doing that. So you can see one is this. The other is good. That's just right. And they say, okay, they get them to do a series of tasks in the lab. So various different things. But the most interesting thing that they're actually interested in is when they look at a set of cartoons, they present to them a set of cartoons that's quite funny cartoons, right? And then ask them to rate firstly, how funny do you think that these cartoons are if you apply an objective standard? So you rate, not so funny, more funny, how much you think. Second question, what feeling are you getting as you're looking at this cartoon? So they write what they're feeling, how intense it is. And the interesting thing is that they found, in terms of the two groups, the group whereby they go this way or this way, no difference in terms of if you were to think about how funny this cartoon is. So it's purely an intellectual process, no different. But how they feel about the cartoon, this is where it gets exciting. Do you actually have more intense humor responses with the group doing this as they are reviewing the cartoon versus the group as doing that? So this is one of the earliest studies that showed that even without telling them, smile, not smile, taking that away, even just a physiological sense of shifting the mouth movement, you're perceiving the world differently. And since then, there's a lot of study within this area that's found interesting results left, right, center. I'll probably share another 1 or 2 studies that will probably illustrate this a little bit more. There's another group of researchers in France. They asked participants to either do the same, press their lips tightly with a pen or a chopstick, I think will be one of them, or a non-Duchenne smile, which means hold with the teeth, right? But no lips. Or the other one is lips and cheeks pulling all the way back. Right? So you got the Duchenne smile, right? Standard smile, or no smile. Again, there was a cover-up story. They said, we just want to study this and that, nothing to do with smile or anything. And then they asked them to watch video clips of landscapes, beautiful pictures, cartoons, this and that. And they found that those in the Duchenne group, which is the largest smile, right, had the most positive experience to do with pleasant scenes, humorous cartoons. They actually experienced more. Similar study that was done from University of Kansas in 2012. Look at very similar type of paradigm. You start to see now that they're trying to actually replicate, they're trying to repeat to see whether this is a solid effect. They got, again, a few groups, usually good of this group. The ones that act, and then after that, they put them through a stressful test. They got them to do a task that's quite difficult to do, right? Getting them to trace something without being able to see the hand and follow all these things, but it's pretty much an impossible task. So they're trying to stress the participants out. As they're doing this task, they're doing this or this, stressing them out. And then after that, they give them a period of time to see what happens after to their heart rate, to see whether that shifts or not. Anything changes, right, between the different groups. And what they found is that the heart rate for those in the smiling group, the Duchenne smile, stayed the lowest during the stress recovery. That means they have the calmest heart rate compared to those without the Duchenne smile. So you can see, we know that the effects of smile and joy is huge, right? And that's, we experience that. But this set of research is suggesting something even more interesting, which is, even if you don't feel it, even if you don't know it, right? But actually getting someone to smile physiologically, right? That in itself is powerful enough to generate effects, whether it is reducing the negativity of stressful effects or increasing the positivity that's associated with an experience. So this is what I think has got some implications for us in terms of, especially those people who say, we find it hard to find joy, or I can't smile. But maybe it is about starting a little bit, trying to flex those helpful muscles, get a little bit of a smile happening, and then the rest will start to follow. Yeah, so going back to your question, in terms of the effects on mind and body, I think it's quite significant. And the other part that you were asking is whether it affects other people that we interact with. I think definitely. Is there a domino effect? I say definitely too, right? And why do I say this? For example, let's just take my face, all right? I'll cover up my face and I'll show you a facial expression. And you tell me how you feel, okay? Number one. Number two, as you are actually viewing my face, do you notice a difference in yourself? All right, let's try this again. Just even a gentle difference. Let's see. So Tiara and Sanara, what did you notice between the two faces?
The first one was where it was an unhappy face, and the second one you were doing the smile. And
Yes, and how did you feel when you see that face in yourself?
when we saw the first face, it was, we're not too happy. We were all just, just having our straight faces. But when you smiled, it made us smile as well.
Great, thank you, Tiara. And Sanara, how about you? How was it?
Same here, doctor. The first time we really didn't have any much of a reaction to it, but then as you smiled, automatically, without us even thinking about it, a smile appeared on our faces. Yes.
And that's that interaction effect that you see. Of course, the first one, maybe you got a little bit shocked. It's like, what happened to our speaker? Because it got electrocuted or something. But when you see someone's expression, it generates a response in us, right? Because we are social creatures as humans, right? We are used to living with other people. Usually we survive over the years as communities, as a population, because we're able to rely on each other. Because one person, we're not very strong, right? We don't have very hard skin, we don't have very sharp teeth or anything like that. We've got a pretty good brain, which allows us to cooperate with each other. So by nature, humans are very social creatures. Yeah, and with our facial and emotional expression, that sends a very automatic signal. Like you can't even say, oh no, I don't want to feel that. You can say that, but you can only do it after the effect. Immediately, there's already a reaction that occurs. If you see a face that's hostile, immediately you tense up. If you see a smiling face, right, the data suggests that naturally it calms our brain, right? If we are feeling stressed and we see someone smile, we also drop down. And I think one of you said that when you see the smile, a smile also appears within you. So I think at the interaction level, there's definitely a fair bit of interaction effect and therefore a domino effect as well. Yeah. So when you are in a joyful state, in a happy state, then I think you naturally give that vibe around you. Right? People around you feel like lighter, like feel happier. But if you're in a very solemn, very sad mood, there's the same effect that can affect other people as well. So I think that there's definitely a strong interaction, social element that actually happens there. Yeah.
Yes, doctor, I agree with you 100%. And I think we were taught since we were, very small, that a smile is contagious. And I'm also very interested in finding out if our smiles and joy can be sensed by the rest of the universe, not only humans, but also the plant and animal world as well.
That's a very interesting question in itself. Look, if I put my scientist hat on as a scientist, mainstream science is not able to measure the effects at this stage, not reliably at least. Yeah, we talk about mainstream science in terms of whether the effects of a human smile and joy can have an effect on animals and the plant world. There's not a lot of data around that. Yeah, and whether or not this can be sensed in the rest of the universe in terms of the distance, it's hard to tell. Yeah, so far we know that if you're in close proximity with someone else, that means when you're close in location with someone, for example, what we did early on, or you can see the other person, then naturally there's a mirroring effect that occurs, right? But if it's far away, if you don't see the person, is there an actual effect? We don't know yet from a science perspective. Yeah. Of course, if I then put my hat on as a Dharma practitioner, yeah, I do think that there is a huge possibility that this can be sensed far, far away. Yeah, there is a sense of a reverberation, a vibration that can be sensed, whether humans, non-humans, animals, and plants, right? From a Dharma perspective, I mean, the most famous one is the Karaniya Metta Sutta, which was understood to be the teaching that the Buddha gave to a group of monks, whereby this group of monks went to practice in the forest and they were disturbed by the spirits of the forest. And when they went to see the Buddha and says, what should we do? The Buddha says, well, this is what you do, right? You send loving kindness, metta, in all directions, right? Wishing all beings, well, happiness, right? And that was what he told the group of monks to do. They went back to the forest, exact same place, did the practice as the Buddha taught, and then completely that changed. The spirits, instead of disturbing them, became supporting their practice. Yeah, so from a Dharma perspective, you see so many documentation or around or records about these effects as well. I practice metta a fair bit myself, and in the process, I also belong to communities who practice that and also teach metta as well. And we hear what we call anecdotal evidence, which is, you know, people reporting here and there interesting things that can happen. For example, you know, one of the ways that you develop metta or metta practice loving kindness is that you will think of a particular friend, right? And you send loving and kind thoughts to this friend. Yeah. And you'll hear of stories, for example, that a person thinks of a friend but they have not been in contact for years. Well, this is an old friend that I've had, but they have not been in recent contact. During that practice, suddenly they get a phone call from that person. Of course, the person didn't necessarily say, hey, I got your metta. Not necessarily that, but they just say, oh, suddenly I thought of you, right? I wanted to actually give you a ring to see how you are. So perhaps something is happening from a mind-to-mind level. And we certainly see a fair bit of those type of cases and the reports around that. So it is pretty fascinating. From a Dharma perspective, I think it's definitely very possible. And the more that you practice, the more that you're surprised as to the effects and the power that the mind can have. And especially a refined and well-trained mind, what the potential it has in changing yourself, changing the world around you. In terms of animals and plant world, the other thing is also, I find, if a person is in a joyful state, right? They deep down in themselves, they feel well, right? They feel a sense of joyfulness, a sense of open-heartedness, a sense of upliftedness. Regardless of whether their energy specifically transfers to animals or plants, I think at least it will affect how we see the world. Because even from a Dharma perspective, each moment we create the reality of the world based on the interaction between how our mind is and what is happening out there. It's a constant interaction, right? And what state we're in determines what type of reality that we are creating before us. So in some ways, if you're in a joyful state, when there's a genuine sense of openness, the heart is uplifted, then I think we see the world differently. We are able to show more care. There's more kindness that naturally comes out of that space. Yeah, a tight mind, a stressed out mind, a mind that is joyless, it's tense, and it's probably going to be hard for it to actually show kindness and care. But if it's a sense of a mind that is open, that's delighted or delightful, that is uplifted, then naturally, I think you perceive the world differently. And because of that, you're able to react and respond to the world differently, right? You may treat the animals differently, right? How you take care of plants and the environment around us, that would be quite different, right? If you're in a joyful state, your cat meows at the door, versus when you're in already quite a stressful state, and the same cat meows in the same door, in the same manner, you're going to react to it very differently, right? If you're already stressed out with something and then the cat meows out the door, it's like, oh, why are you disturbing me, right? Same cat, same door, same sound of meowing. If you're in a naturally okay state and joyful state, you'll be like, oh, you poor cat, let me open the door for you to come in. So the reality that we create that we live each moment depends on the interaction between what's actually occurring within us and external to us. So in some ways, this is also part of the dependent origination. That is all co-conditioning, right? Internally, externally. In fact, there's no internal, external. It's just a whole mass of conditioning that occurs. And out of that, it also tilts us towards how we see the world, how we react to the world. And again, depending on how we react and respond to the world around us, the different effects come back. So that's the law of karma again. So I think that from that perspective, like I say, from a science perspective, it's going to be a little bit harder to describe that one, but definitely if you look at it from a Dharma perspective, I'll say that yes, the energy travels far and wide. animals, humans, non-humans, right? The world, the climate, everything itself, because we are all conditioned for each other. We condition ourselves and the world around us.
Yes, definitely, Doctor. I think a mind filled with joy can definitely be sensed by so many people beyond ourselves. For example, when I come home and let's say I'm in a good mood and I'm very happy, I could see my dogs coming and wagging their tails. So they can, I think, sense it. Whereas if I come home in a grumpy mood after school, after maybe getting low marks on my exams, they definitely don't come and, show the same amount of joy. So I can definitely agree with you on that. Moving on, I think you briefly spoke about metta and when discussing that question. So our next question we had was, in today's world, we often observe that some children and as well as adults are either unaware or simply incapable of altruistic joy. That is, to genuinely experience joy at others' joy. The noble quality the Buddha called mudita. How can we nurture joy and smiles in a wholesome way?
Again, the different parts of this question. I think let's speak about children, which I think probably same principles will apply for adults as well. A child typically needs a few key foundation building blocks for mudita to, I think, be able to occur. Right? Firstly, the child needs to have what we call a theory of mind. And this is from a science perspective. Theory of mind means, if I have theory of mind, means I know that what I think, what I experience is different from you, Tiara, is different from you, Sanara, right? So I understand that outside of me, there's a different being with a whole set of different experience. And this ability called theory of mind typically starts developing when a baby is about 18 months old, all the way up to about 4 or 5 years old. It starts to mature this even more and more. So about age of 4 or 5, the theory of mind is more and more well developed. Yeah. So for someone to be able to be joyful of others, they need to first have the theory of mind, which is understanding that others are a separate being with a different reaction, different set of thoughts, feelings, behaviors, their worldview, beliefs, and so on and so forth. So this is one of the key parts. Now we know that from the science and the medical field is that some individuals potentially have some type of neurological type of conditions or medical conditions whereby it's harder for them to be able to experience that. The theory of mind is not as well established as others. So in terms of that, it could possibly make it much harder for them to actually experience mudita. But outside of that, when we say the large majority of the population, then it is a natural process that just occurs. We don't need to try to cultivate theory of mind. It just, as the child explores the world and starts to see the world, they recognize, oh, this is mommy, this is daddy, and they have got, yeah, they are people too, and oh yeah, they have got feelings, and it might be not the same as me, might not be related to me, so they're starting to actually be able to develop that ability and theory of mind. Now, once they have theory of mind, so that's one key ingredient. The second key ingredient is that then the basic of safety, sufficient food and clothing, that must be there. Because if the person doesn't have the most basic needs of humanity, then naturally their mind is not going to be anywhere near joy, right? They're under threat, constantly fearing, right? There's a lot of fear and anxiety about survival. So of course, the basic needs should be there, yeah? And the basic needs, the main ones are safety, care, right? Nurturance, food, clothing, yeah? So this is the second ingredient. And then the third ingredient is that one is able to actually experience joy. So there are actually joyful experiences in their life. And in fact, for children, it's not difficult. It's probably harder for adults. As you were saying early on, you could find a lot of picture of children laughing, yeah, but less so of smiling. But I'll say that laugh is probably even an extended version of the joyfulness, right? Especially when we see kids and little kids laugh. For example, I've got a 2-year-old, and when he laughs, it's like his whole world just beams up, right? The eyes laugh, the mouth laughs, that the whole being just laughs. And when you see him like that, you can't help but also smile or laugh along, right? So for them, smiling, laughing is actually quite a joyful, it's a very joyful state, and it's actually quite natural for them. Now, I can't remember where I got these statistics from, but they say that adults typically on average smile about 20 times a day. Yeah. Children, especially young children, the average is, do you want to guess, Tiara or Sanara? So average for an adult, 20 times a day. Children, what do you think?
50 times?
50, Tiara? Right, Sanara?
Around 40 to 45 times a day.
40 to 45 times? Okay. The statistic that I've got, again, I can't quite remember, unfortunately, where I got it from, but I think it's very true, is a child typically on average smiles 400 times a day. Way more than adults do, right? So I think the natural capacity, because life is so vibrant, things are new, everything is something to play along with. If we're able to provide them with the necessary safety, then naturally as they explore the world and we help them to actually, we don't squash their joy. So this is another ingredient. So firstly is theory of mind. Secondly is basic safety. Thirdly is a sense of allowing them to explore the world and experience that joy. So these three so far is to do with their capacity of experiencing joy. And then the fourth one I think will be really important is teaching them even basic things like kindness, care towards others, right? We don't even need to necessarily talk about joy for others yet, but simply teaching them very good principles like care, generosity. Yeah, even if you want to talk about metta, right? Giving something, offering something, right? If they give some, like if you got something, ask them to pass it to, uncle or whoever it is. And when they do that, and they say, oh, okay, very good. And if they receive something, say thank you, right? Things like that, that they're able to start to actually, oh, I relate to other people, right? And in the relationship they have with other people, I show care, I show kindness, I'm able to give something or offer something, or even if it's just basic of, serving them a little, put some water for someone who a visitor, as we normally would, right? In a good household, we naturally do that. As we create those experiences, right? And we help them to actually see that, see, this is really good. It's good of you to be able to do that, encouraging them to be able to do that. That will, I think, naturally increase their sense of care, their sense of kindness, and which then starts to provide more ingredients for them to feel joy for other people. Yeah. And then the last one that I want to actually emphasize is also this. Sometimes it's about helping them to also recognize that they don't always need to be the one that gets it all, right? And this is a tricky one sometimes, especially with young children, right? It's like, I want this thing, I want it, this is my toy, right? And sometimes like two-person wants a toy, but it's the other person's, then you give it to the other person, of course your child is going to be upset. Yeah. This is the point whereby what we call actual being present to them, validating what they feel is really important. We don't need to say, oh, you should not feel this way, stop feeling sad, you should be, only giving to other people. There's only one side of a coin. A good, comprehensive, a full approach will be, it's okay, I understand that you're feeling upset. Yeah, and it's okay they're feeling upset because you're not getting what you want. So this is still acknowledging how they feel. That means it's okay, you're feeling this way, right? But as you can see, if you let someone else play with it, you see so-and-so is having fun with it. So this way, it teaches them that it's okay for them not to win all the time. And sometimes by offering something that makes them a little bit upset, but someone else starts to feel joy, they start to see, oh, it's okay. Someone else can feel joy. It's okay for me also to feel a little bit upset. So this way, their vibrancy is there, right? They are more comfortable with how they feel. Negative feeling, positive feeling, they are recognizing it. They're allowing space for it. Yeah. At the same time, you're encouraging them to also extend the kindness and care towards other people. Then all that starts to then give more and more ingredients for this natural sense of mudita, which is joy for others to arise. Yeah. So going back to the theory of mind, the basic safeties, right? Giving them, just simply allowing them to experience joy in their life, encouraging them to be giving of other people, and also helping them to work through the difficult emotions that they have when they're in competition with other people. When those ingredients are there, I think, then naturally, it will allow more and more space for mudita or joy for others to increase. Of course, without having to even say more, you can, of course, also help children to practice metta, right? And from what I can see, sometimes it's much easier for children to practice metta than adults. Maybe because of the 400 smiles per day that they're actually doing.
Your words are truly inspiring, Doctor. And I also think that in present society, people smile more with their ice-cold eyes and their teeth than genuinely with their hearts. So then when you see a young child, you know that their smile is genuine. They smile at a shadow or anything really. And I feel like that sense of happiness can also be brought towards adults as well. The final question we have for you, Doctor, is that we all know that even now there are really challenging times going on. And even while you're facing criticism or other obstacles in life, how do you cultivate joy and smile and also spread it with everyone around us?
That's a very good question. I think it's a very relevant question in this day and age, where there's so many challenges that's happening left, right, center, at a global level, in a local community level. I think my perspective around this is that the sense of smile and joy takes practice, yeah. But the interesting thing, like I said early on, sometimes without even knowing it, without knowing that you're smiling, there's already effects of that. So the most basic that anyone can do with no practice is simply learning to smile more, even though it feels fake. Yeah. One teacher in the past used to say, "Fake it till you make it," right? Teaching metta says, "Fake it till you make it." And this is actually no one other than our most venerable Mahinda, who taught me this years back. He says, "Fake it till you make it." Right, we start. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in this, because even the science shows that even if we don't know we are smiling, even just a facial movement muscle, right? There's another teacher of mine more recently says that sometimes he has to tell his meditation students to use 2 fingers and just do this even if you have to, right? And putting all jokes aside, the key thing here is that the more that we learn to smile, the easier it becomes. Even if we don't feel it, even if we're able to do it more and more in our lives, it becomes easier for us, right? There's a bit of science behind it in terms of its effects against stress, its effects in bringing up more joy. So the most basic is you can actually still do that, yeah. And those whereby they've got more and more practice in smiling, in, for example, doing more metta practice or having joy in their lives, it will become easier and easier to tap into it, right? Joy, or its expression in the smile, is a habit that we can cultivate, right? And as with any good habit, the more that we do it, the more it becomes natural. Yeah, the more that we naturally smile, we're naturally able to experience joy in our lives, the more it is available to us, right? Especially in times of difficulty, that when we can face difficulties with the sense of a smile, it sometimes changes the entire perspective. As I was saying early on, we create the reality of this moment based on what we are actually experiencing and what we bring to the experience and the actual experience itself. If you can face challenges with a smile, if you can face challenges with a certain sense of joy in our hearts, then it becomes easier for us to see things outside of the box. The other thing that can be really helpful, especially when joy or smiling is a little bit too far, sometimes, for example, when I teach metta meditation, some students say that it's a little bit too hard to feel the emotion of the joy, the feeling of joy. So I say, well, can you actually at least feel some sense of gratitude, right? Because perhaps even in the most difficult situation, can you tune your mind into the goodness that's actually there? Can you incline the mind to actually see the goodness that's actually there? Not goodness that's created, but goodness that's actually there, right? And when we're able to train our minds that way, naturally, we're able to see more layers of what is actually we're experiencing. Even the challenging situations, most difficult situations typically have some goodness, right? There's still things that we can be grateful for. And starting from gratitude, then that can allow us to then go into more joyful states and smile. So if you got smile and joy on one hand and gratitude on the other hand, when we meet difficulties and challenges in our life, I think it sets us up in a much better place to be able to then face that with a genuine smile. Of course, initially you might be faking it, but eventually you make it. Because I often say, an open heart smiles, and smiles open hearts. So that's why I think.
Thank you, Dr. Chien. So I think another question that I would like to ask you is, there's a lot of fear associated with COVID, and in this uncertainty, how can you sort of create a sense of joy within your own households in order to ensure that you sort of survive through this the tough, challenging times?
That's a very good point. I think it's very similar to what I've said in that previous question as well, which is that there's a real objective challenging situation, right? But there's also things around us that we can see and tune our mind into the goodness that's around, right? For example, even when the most difficult types of situations, there are those who are actually providing service, there are actually those who are actually the frontline healthcare workers. If we're able to actually determine where our attention goes, we can actually look at the stats, how terrible it is. But in the same reality, we're not trying to say that change a complete situation, the same situation. But if we see the goodness that's actually coming out of there, the people who are reaching out, or the people who are actually there to help support each other, the goodness is actually there, right? You know, like wonderful organizations like the ones that you belong to, you know, like to see the goodness that's actually in there, right? There's actually gratitude naturally can arise. Also having a sense that sometimes if smile and joy is a little bit too far, aim for a little bit closer, gratitude, I think. And with that, then it just helps balance the mind. Because when the mind is anxious and fearful, what tends to happen is that the mind tightens up. Yeah, it's not open. Yeah, it becomes very rigid. But when we're able to find ways of softening, and one of the ways is to tune and to actually focus on in the same situation, but other aspects of it, so that we get a more complete picture. When we're able to tune into sense of gratitude or what is we still do have, right? The safety that we still do have, the people who are there who are actually trying their hard to actually keep us safe, the frontline health workers or whoever, you know, the NGOs, you know, or whoever that's actually there, when we're able to tune into that, plus think of what we can do. What is it that we can offer in terms of what other people's needs are? In that way, we're shifting the same situation, our focus differently. Even that slight differently, it starts to create a different change in the world. Exactly like what we're doing today. Because of COVID, we can't be in the same space, right? All of you can't be in the same space, even though you're in the same country. But just recognizing that, you know, this is what we can do. We can still reach out, right? We can still touch the lives of different people, right? By doing the things that we do. If we tune to those elements as opposed to the elements that are not so helpful, then the reality itself starts to shift. So this is what I think.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chien. We definitely learned so much today, and your words were definitely inspiring. Now we would like to ask Dr. Ari to share a few closing remarks on this topic with us.
Well, I would like to thank all of you for sharing your wisdom and for asking very relevant questions from Professor Chu. And then I also learned quite a bit. I do smile, I do laugh sometimes. I am very fond of laughing, smiling at myself, at my own follies, at my own mistakes I have committed. And that kind of laughing, smiling at yourself, particularly when in the morning I go to the bathroom to do my shave, when I look at my face, I think of the day that passed and the kind of foolish things I did, and I laugh at myself, what a fool you fellow you were, and then not to do such feelings again. So I thank the professor, I thank both of you, and also the organizers of this program, which make us share our knowledge, our wisdom with one another. With this effort, may all of us make the entire world smile and enjoy joy of living and joy of service, and make the entire world well and happy without any coronas hereafter, so that we all can smile together happily and peacefully. Thank you very much for asking me to come and join you.
Now we would like to ask Dr. Charika to share a few words with us and thank Dr. Chien for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Chien, for really sharing your valuable time. And we truly value your wisdom and the thoughts that you shared with us. I think all of us were exposed to the art of smiling and experiencing joy. In today's world, I consider smile as a skill that we need to learn and practice for the well-being of ourselves and others. Thanks so much for being an embodiment of professionalism and humanism, Dr. Chien. Thank you. Tiara and Sanara, thanks so much for moderating the conversation so gracefully. We truly value this intergenerational dialogues of wisdom and knowledge. Dr. Ari, thank you for being with us and encouraging us throughout and sharing your thoughts. We appreciate the support of all the friends from different parts of the world who continue to believe in our work, and thanks a lot for joining us today. Last but not least, Jananta, Madhushan, Sanji, and Niven are remembered with much gratitude for their technical support. May you all be well, happy, and peaceful. Stay safe, stay blessed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.